Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Got kind of like a little special show here for you today. Been asked by a lot of people, Pete, what do you think of the new Iron Maiden track, The Writing on the Wall, which is the first song that they've released from their upcoming album in September called Senjutsu. So, Pete, what do you think of this song? A lot of people voicing their opinions on the internet about what they think of Writing on the Wall. I will say most people that I've seen comments on don't seem to be too into the track, which is kind of surprising because I think it's actually quite good. It's quite different. I will give you that. So I've listened to it a few times, and I've kind of jotted down some thoughts on what I think. So first of all, before I get going, I'm the kind of guy. I've been listening to Iron Maiden since the very beginning, and I've kind of been on with them through all the different eras, all the different with the couple changes in singers, the big albums, the not so big albums, the stylistic changes, the reboots, the reunions, all that sort of thing. For the most part, I'm pretty much on board with everything. I don't really like the two Blaze albums. I don't think they're bad per se. I don't dislike Blaze as a singer. I just never felt he was a good fit for the band. Right, so I tend to think of those two albums as kind of the worst out of their catalog. I love the first two. All right, with Diano, those are legendary. Love all those 80s albums to death. I even like the early 90s albums. And I really appreciate the albums that they've done since Bruce came back to the band. With Brave New World and onwards. It's a different Iron Maiden. The songwriting style is a little different. They're writing these more adventurous kind of epic length tracks, lengthy lead-ins and intros and all that sort of thing. To me, it's still Iron Maiden. It still sounds like Iron Maiden. It's just they've kind of taken on a different maturity that, for a lot of people kind of clashes, right? I know a lot of people who still want to hear Maiden do albums like they did in the 80s. And, I just don't think that that's ever going to happen again. It's a long time ago. So that being said, the new album is coming out in, a month and a half or something like that. We've got this brand new song called The Writing on the Wall. It's very different for them. At least, in a few ways. So it's much more of a mid-paced level track, right? It's very kind of moody. There's nothing really fast about it. What's interesting, it's lacking that kind of long opening interlude, that long intro that we've seen on a lot of songs on the last bunch of Maiden albums. So there you have that. There's no real big kind of gallop section in this song. All right, kind of stays at that same even keel, mid-pace throughout most of the track, which, okay, a little different. I think Bruce sounds great. He's singing spectacular on this, as always. One thing I like is Steve Harris's bass, really prominent on this song, throughout the whole song. That I like to hear. One of the things that drew me into Iron Maiden's music very, very early on is you always heard that bass very high in the mix. Okay, Steve is always doing some really interesting stuff, and we've kind of gotten away from that for kind of like a long while. So it's good to hear the bass so prominent here. The guitar riffs, all right, from the trio there, going more for textures rather than a lot of big heavy riffs. You got a nice solo from, I think, is Dave, leading into some cool harmonies, and then you got an Adrian solo, if I got that correctly. I try very hard to listen and pick out little intricacies there that would determine which player it was. It didn't seem to be Yannick to me on either one of them. Cool guitar leads, right? The solos are pretty good. I like the middle section there. Overall, I like how the two solos bookend, so those cool little vocal harmonies in the middle. Overall, I think it's a neat song. It's pleasing on the ears. It's not overly heavy. I know a lot of people want it like a barn burner. But kudos to the band, I think, for doing something a little bit differently. All right, it's to me, it sounds very different from anything they've done on these more recent albums. Doesn't sound anything like the 80s stuff, although you can hear a little bit of that kind of experimentation that they were starting to do on Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. If I can compare it to anything, even though it doesn't really sound like anything from those albums, I think they were going for a feel, whereas it's not quite the real proggy stuff of late. It's not quite the real raging new wave of British heavy metal stuff of old. It's kind of somewhere in between, I guess, but very not indicative of what we would expect to hear from Maiden. And I know that has turned off some people. And, you know, this kind of brings to mind a whole other topic. It's like, you know, in recent years, a lot of bands, especially the bigger bands, you know, when they've got an album coming out, there's this whole thing about releasing, you know, an early song, releasing an early single. Sometimes you get 2 songs. Sometimes you get 3. And I found in most cases, the stuff they're releasing is either not indicative of the rest of the album or not even close to being the best song on the album. And I don't know whether they're doing this on purpose, but to me it seems like you're kind of shooting yourself on the foot, because if the rest of the album is not like this at all, and it's what we would expect from Maiden, well, are you going to turn off a lot of people by releasing this single and people assuming that the rest of the album is going to sound just like this and then not even bothering with the album? Because I've seen that happen before. I mean, it happened with the most recent Whitesnake album. I mean, they released that first song, "Shut Up and Kiss Me" or "Come Up and Kiss Me," whatever it was called, and so many people, you know, even longtime Whitesnake fans, were kind of turned off by that single, and didn't even bother with the album. Well, that's probably one of the worst songs on the album, right? You have other great stuff on there, so you have to wonder if, with this new Maiden album, is the rest of the album on Senjutsu similar to this? Or is this kind of an outlier? And if it is, interesting that they released this first, if, you know, the rest of the album is a complete corker like most of the Maiden albums are, or, you know, to my opinion anyway. So, I don't know. You would think they would want to release something that's, you know, gets the blood going and, you know, is just a typical Maiden rager, right? But instead they put this kind of really mellow, dreamy, kind of proggy, you know, mid-paced number that I think is cool, but like I've already said, I have seen many people talk about their dislike for this song, and they're hoping and praying that the rest of the album isn't like this. So just an interesting kind of dilemma, right? And it's something that in my recent conversation here with Dee Snider, you know, he talked clearly about. He says it's really tough being an older legacy performer from a very popular band back in the day, trying to release new music, whereas if you do something really different, people say they don't like it because it doesn't sound enough like the classic material. And if you do something that sounds too much like the classic material, they say, oh, they haven't moved on, they keep doing the same thing. He's like, so you're like caught in this catch-22, you know, we can't win, right? So with Maiden, I'm giving them some kudos for doing something fairly different. I mean, this song is unlike anything we've heard from them in a while. It's pretty different. And I'm okay with that. So we'll see what the album brings. I go in with an open mind for all this stuff. It's like, there are a lot of times where I don't even listen to these first song releases from new albums or these initial singles or early leak stuff. I would rather just hear the album on its own, from start to finish, when it comes out. Because again, I don't want to have any preconceived notions of what it may or may not be about. And again, it won't really affect me too much because I'm going to go and buy it and listen to the whole thing anyway. But I know there's a lot of people that won't. How much you want to bet? A lot of people who do not like this Writing on the Wall song are not even going to bother with the Maiden album. That'd be a shame, right? Because it may not be anything like the rest of the album. So again, I question releasing this particular song. Maybe there's a point to the whole thing. I don't know. I don't mind it, but I know some people who are pretty turned off by it, and you have to wonder if that's going to affect sales of the album when it comes out. I don't know. I guess time will tell. But there is my take on the Writing on the Wall from the upcoming Iron Maiden album, Senjutsu. We'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it, right? Because I thought the last album was really good, and I am ready for a new Maiden. So I guess we all should just stay tuned until the end of September, right? Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't. Click on that notification bell so you get notified of every time we post a new video. We've got the link to our Ko-Fi page below for channel donations, the link to our merch page for all sorts of Sea of Tranquility swag, as well as seatranquility.org, the webzine that has now been on the internet for 20 years with over 22,000 album reviews. Make sure you go check that out as well. So thanks for watching. We'll see you tonight with the Hudson Valley Squares. Take care. Bye-bye.